Hello and welcome to Finn. We're today at the ADS in London, where we're at the CEO briefing for the aerospace industry. And I'm joined on a panel here by Scott McLarty, who is from Spirit AeroSystems. He started his career as an apprentice looking after HGVs with Southern Transport before joining BAE Systems and then going to Spirit AeroSystems. Next to me is Colin Smith. Colin's chair of the Aerospace Growth Partnership, as well as being the new president of ADS, the British industry's body, and of course spent more than 40 years with Rolls-Royce, where he retired as the director of engineering for all of the world's engineering with Rolls-Royce, including the development of the Trent engines. So a lot of experience in our engineering side there. And to my left is Paul Everitt, the CEO of ADS. He's had some experience in the aerospace industry before with the SBAC, before going to the Society of Motor Manufacturers and Traders, where he was CEO there, before coming back to ADS to be the spokesman really for the aerospace industry. With us here today is an invited panel of CEOs, leaders in the management of aerospace companies across the UK and Ireland. So we're going to be talking about the key issues that are affecting our industry today. Paul, I'm going to turn to you first because I want to talk about Brexit. And I know you've been speaking on behalf of the aerospace industry really about what we're doing. But what is happening? We're hearing a lot on the news. How bad is this uncertainty to us and what should the government be doing?
Well, let's not take too downbeat a view. I think obviously Brexit is a big challenge for industry, and particularly the global and European aerospace industry. But just before the end of last year, we, certainly from a UK perspective and our European partners, took a big step forward with the, if you like, the permission to go to the second stage of negotiations. So we've got, and particularly for the audience here, some of the concerns around EU citizens, some of the concerns about the border in Ireland, north and south, and a couple of, and the sort of bill, if you like, that the UK is going to have to pay to leave have been, if not settled, at least sufficient progress that we can get onto the meat of the negotiations. And that's really the focus for us, really, is about how we as an industry get the best possible deal to ensure that the growth that we've seen in recent years continues. And within that, I suppose we've been very clear with the government about what the key big issues for our sector have been. So it's about staying part of the European Aviation Safety Agency. It is about making sure that we have access to the widest pool of talent. It is about making sure that from a UK point of view, we get to access some of the collaborative R&D programs that our colleagues in Europe will, we have been part of. They will continue to be running, and being part of them is certainly would be good for us. But I think that the topic for this particular moment is ensuring that we do get a transition arrangement. We've been very clear with government that, the negotiations to understand what our new relationship with the rest of the EU is going to be will take some time. And even when we understand what that new relationship is going to be, there's going to be a significant burden for industry to transition from where we are now to what that new relationship is going to be. So the focus for us is to ensure that we get an early agreement. In principle, both the UK government and the EU27 have said, a transition arrangement would be good, but we now need to see that formalised quickly so that businesses have the confidence that they will get to understand what the final arrangements are going to be before they have to put them in place. Because what we are finding is that life goes on. Companies are already, and have been for many months, taking decisions that have a life well beyond March 2019, so are already beginning to factor in what they think might be the circumstances. And it seems to us the longer we have before we can provide some level of certainty, the more likely companies will, if you like, put in place their own contingency measures, which may well not be particularly helpful to the UK.
So the no deal option, you're saying that companies will start preparing if they're not already for that, which sounds like it's slightly more than the government's been doing, but you think that will happen?
We've been very clear that the no deal is the worst possible outcome. And to be honest, as we've moved through this process, I think, whilst I'm sure that There are people in the UK government and the EU, kind of who wish to hang on to the idea that that's a potential outcome. The reality is it's in no one's interest that there is not a sensible deal. It's just a question of understanding what the terms of that are going to be. We, from an ADS point of view, actually will be launching a bit today, advice, if you like, to companies on how they can best prepare for this coming period. Clearly, there is uncertainty. Clearly, we can't know what the final deal will be, but we are suggesting a series of measures that companies can take in order to put themselves in the best possible set of circumstances. And really, that's about, in the first instance, is about data collection and an understanding of, if you like, how your business interacts with the European regulatory regimes, so that you at least are able to put your hands on the information that you will need when that new relationship is articulated.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Scott, you're responsible at Spirit AeroSystems now in the UK and Malaysia, so a nice long distance relationship there. But it's an American company, it's a large American business in the aerospace industry. Have you got any sense yet that the Brexit could actually affect your business directly? Is there still an appetite for investment into a business like Spirit, which is desperately important for Scotland, for example?
I think just first of all to echo Paul's comments, I don't think our American HQ is particularly concerned by Brexit. I think we're more interested in how it affects our customers like Airbus. For Airbus, they've certainly lobbied pretty hard, and I'd agree with that. 95% of our business is airframe, it's wings, it goes to Broughton. So if they have to pay export tariffs, that then affects the future of that site, which impacts on the supply chain, and we're part of that supply chain. So I think it's fundamental that we don't get tariffs, and that's a strong message from us. And I think our HQ would push very heavily on how do we grow our Airbus business, being predominantly 75% a Boeing business today. How do we make sure we protect the UK Airbus division? So that's probably the most important message for us on Brexit. Movement of labour is also a key part for us. Our engineering and R&D investments we've made over the last probably 3-4 years. We've invested heavily in people, and a lot of them are from outside the UK. So that would be a significant blow to us in terms of our intellectual property, our thinking, our people, our skills from an engineering side of things. That's a key risk, and our US would be really concerned about that. I think from an investment perspective, we've been very fortunate. Our US counterparts have invested very heavily in the UK. We've had about £22 million pounds of investment this year alone just on new projects, which for a business that's investing £400 million pounds annually across a business 10 times the size of the UK, that's a significant chunk of the corporate purse. And we're looking at another investment next year of about 30 million purely in R&D facilities and people and ideas that we want to go do. So in 2 years, that's about 50 million. So I'd say the appetite is absolutely still there for inward investment. We see a strong industry, we see a strong appetite for investment, and actually it's a good time to be in the aerospace industry. So we don't really see any risk other than the Brexit risk. That's of a medium concern to us, but I still think we'll work our way through that.
Thank you. Colin, Scott mentioned there the manpower issues, and with the Aerospace Growth Partnership, I guess a lot of growth is going to depend on the people. It's going to depend on the skills that those people might have. Can I ask you about the supply chain of people? Do you think we're ready for it? I mean, if we do take the worst case scenario and post-Brexit, we may lose a number of the people that are already in. How is the UK's engineering strength going to remain if we don't get the people? How are we going to get them?
Well, that's a really big question. I'm quite optimistic that there will be a resolution on the people transfer between EU citizens and UK citizens, because it would be in no one's advantage to create huge barriers there. As far as engineering requirements in the UK, a number of people have said over the last few years that we're short of 250,000 or some number like that graduates. And I have sort of have two schools of thought on that. First of all, that's true in that we don't have enough people coming through primary schools into secondary schools with a knowledge of what science and technology can offer you as a career. once you got through secondary, if you don't do maths by the time you're 10, you're never going to do it. So that rules out so many career options, whether it's veterinary or biochemical or whatever, and engineering. So we need more and more drive in the UK from a pure competitiveness point of view to match the growing Asian and other economies, and the maths teaching in India is phenomenal. So that's point number one. You've got to start very, very early and drive it through. And I don't think the Department of Education is consistent enough on that. On the second subject, is actually engineering companies aren't very good themselves at promoting engineering inside their own companies. And I'm going to say something that some people will find a little controversial. But when you are an engineer and you look over the road and you see that your colleagues in finance are getting paid more in an engineering company, it sort of grates. And certainly from my children's point of view, they're not dumb. And to use an expression, Boris Johnson once asked my boss, how come that we don't have any nuclear physicists in this country? And the answer from the boss was, well, if you're smart enough to do nuclear physics, you're smart enough to know there aren't any jobs in the UK. So it is a bit of chicken and egg here, and I do think companies can help themselves. But to get back to the question about Brexit, we have, if we pay the right salaries and have the right projects, engineers and scientists want to work on projects that deliver. And you will, if you're doing exciting projects, then I genuinely believe people will come to fulfil that. There will have to be a deal with Europe on free movement of labour. I'm pretty confident that will happen, because it would be bonkers not for it to happen. But equally, we all need to help drive more people into the bottom end in science and technology.
And both of you came in through apprenticeships, I think. Yeah. So do you think we are really embracing the idea of apprenticeships, or do you think it's really just a lip service?
Well, we've been talking to a couple of government ministers recently about the apprentice levy, and language that I used 6 months ago was now publicised last week by other people, that the apprentice levy at the moment is just another tax. That's clearly not the intent, but for big companies it certainly feels that way, and the Byzantine nightmare of trying to find out where the money's going and get people onto the training scheme it is not helpful, I don't think, as a personal view, slightly backed up by other people. So we need to encourage people to do apprenticeships. Certainly the big apprentice schemes I'm aware of, people are clamouring to fill them. The smaller ones, clearly there's a bit of a hiccup at the moment, because frankly I don't think anyone understands this new levy and the mechanism by which it works. But I work with a couple of companies, and the apprentices we get through are absolutely cracking. Of course, once you've got people that understand how to make things and how to manufacture and how it all organises, and programme management that comes with doing a scientific and apprenticeship degree, they become really, really good employees.
Okay. Scott, you have apprentice schemes?
Yeah, we do, and I can draw some quite good comparisons between my Malaysia business and my UK business. One of the challenges we have is actually the demographics for our workforce, which at the moment the UK is about average age 47, Malaysia average age is 27, so much younger workforce. Really strongly backed government schemes in terms of getting people in from both semi-skilled and skilled perspective, pipeline of talent being prepared by the government and by colleges into that factory. The UK is a little bit tougher. We are doing some good things, and when we open apprenticeships up, we're getting some really good, for instance, 10 apprentices would be 40, 50 applicants at least, if not over 100 applicants. So certainly the demand's there, but the skill set sometimes is a mixture of underqualified and overqualified. We do seem to be focusing very heavily on university education. Need to maybe swing the balance a little bit back towards apprentice education, because we need both. We need people at university and into apprenticeship routes, and we seem to be certainly in Scotland, the funding of universities is 1.7 billion, the funding of colleges is 500,000. So for half the number of places in university places versus apprenticeship places. So the Scottish Government, and I apologise for being a Scottish Government message at the moment, but certainly they've got the funding model wrong, and we're trying to influence them more towards balancing towards apprenticeships, is where business really needs the workforce to be. We need both. I'm not saying we don't need university qualified people, but we need both, not just the top end of the skill set.
Okay. Paul, we're hearing from the big picture there. What about the SMEs? A lot of ADS membership is made up from small companies What's your feedback there, and what do we need to be doing to make change?
I think what we've seen, and it's sort of echoed in the comments from Scott and Colin, which is the larger businesses, if you like, brands that people know and love, do not have problems attracting certainly apprentices, indeed graduates and postgraduates, because those businesses have a track record that is known and understood. I think where we do face more challenges is as if you like, down into the supply chain, where the brands of the companies is not so strong. Those who don't necessarily, the 1 in 10 that might be going to Spirit or Rolls-Royce or any other major brand, don't naturally go, oh, I've not got in there. So what I'll now do is go to a business that I know works with Rolls-Royce or one of the others. Their tendency is to go, oh, well, I've not got what I wanted. I'll go into, another sector or do something different. So I think the supply chain does find it more difficult to access high quality apprentices. Some of that's as well down to the fact that they don't necessarily have all of the resources to organise and orchestrate that activity. Some do and do a good job, but the majority, particularly those that are perhaps growing quite quickly, are kind of busy chasing everyday business and don't necessarily have the opportunity to organise as well as they might. So I think there are things we can do. In the end, it comes back to the point that Colin made. We have to expand the pipeline of young people who see engineering and manufacturing as a career. There is tough competition. Aerospace is growing quickly, but there are a number of other high growth sectors as well in the UK. Automotive has done well in recent years, motorsport, a whole range of other areas. Nuclear, civil nuclear is going to be, potentially a significant growing industry in the coming years. So we, from an aerospace point of view, do have to fight our corner in making sure that our proposition to those young people is a good one. But I think there is a broader collective action for the UK, which is just to put more value on careers in manufacturing and engineering. I think, for a long period of time, even when I was a young person, which was many, many years ago, if you were at school, there was just a general dissuadement, if you like, from pursuing a manufacturing or an industrial career, because other things were seen to be either paying more money or seen to be offer better prospects. And I think the truth of the matter is that careers in manufacturing and engineering are good long-term high value opportunities. And I think we need to do more to articulate that to young people.
Okay. Are there any questions at all from our audience? No? It's brilliant. Okay. I want to move on to really the state of the market as we are now. And I know a few months ago we were talking that since 2010 there'd been a 19% increase with the aerospace sector compared to 3% for the rest of the British economy. So we were looking pretty good. 6 out of 10 companies expected growth. We're employing 120,000 people, of which 3% of those are apprentices. So on paper, we look like we're doing well. What's the feeling now with all of the stuff hanging over us?
I think, if we take a step back, the global aerospace market is growing and growing strongly. This year we'll have produced collectively, the highest number of large aircraft we've ever produced. That's each year goes by, each year it's a new record. So the global market is growing, and that's good news for the UK. But the competitive pressures are intensifying, and I guess those fall in a number of areas. So one, there's no doubt that our customers, whether those are airlines or passengers using airlines, are increasingly price conscious, and everyone wants a slightly better deal. So whilst volumes are growing, margins are always under pressure, and that means from a UK point of view we have to, if you like, our benchmark is not the productivity improvement in the UK. It has to be the productivity improvement in some of our, most on our nearest competitors, and I would say that gives us a bit of a hurdle still to reach. There's competition from, if you like, some of the growing markets, China, Southeast Asia. They want to buy aircraft, but in return, their governments are expecting some level of aerospace activity. They covet the high value long-term jobs that our sectors like ours provide. So if we want to sell things to them, there's a kind of quid pro quo, which is that we have to, or the OEMs have to put some work in those locations. And we're seeing, certainly from both Airbus and Boeing, if you like, the globalization of their own production facilities as well. So, in those circumstances, we can't afford to rest on our laurels, really. We have to be able to sort of hold ourselves up and say, we are making better progress than our competitors. And clearly there's a role for government in the UK to help with that process.
Okay. Scott, talking about that competition and with China, for example, it's not just about Airbus setting up something there as one of your biggest customers, but they're also developing their own aerospace industry in terms of manufacturing as well, as we're seeing with the C919, for example. How much of a threat do you see a developing Chinese industry, a re-emerging Russian growth? Do you see that as an opportunity for a company like Spirit?
Yeah, I think it's both a threat and obviously a huge opportunity. 25% of all aircraft going forward will be sold in China, as an example, is the number that's quoted. So as the market expands, okay, so we went from rate 36 in Airbus and pretty much same rates in Boeing to rate 54 this year, rate 57 next year, definitely going to go to rate 60, doing studies for rate 70. So you could argue you're losing market share to China, but arguably the rate increases are coming from that area anyway. So you really have to be part of that game, and I think it's really important you've got a strategic plan to not necessarily be in China, but to be helping to deliver what I'd call offset industrial participation for our customers. For me, there's really four things you need to do to earn the right to grow. One is, yes, we're all under pressure on margins. And as the customers sell more aeroplanes, they're looking for more price point on that, and they expect your product to become cheaper. Even at static rates, they expect it to become cheaper, but as the rate increases, it absolutely needs to be cheaper. I think the second thing is big pressure on quality right now. So if you're a supplier that cannot deliver the right quality, then forget it. You need to earn the right to grow, and actually I'm seeing the quality becoming more of a pressure than delivery. Even some of our customers would rather have it a day late but right than on time. So that's a significant cultural shift that I think the UK needs to think about. The third thing for me is you also, while you're making thinner margins, you've got to be invested in R&D. I've never seen the need for R&D to be so high. We are certainly quadrupled our R&D spend, materials technology, all that kind of stuff is the way to stay ahead of the competition. So yeah, we might have to put product into China or India or wherever, but it's really been able to compete on a technology basis and offer up support to these economies by being a partner with them, but maybe not on your key technology. And then for me, all of that needs to come together in terms of if you want to win more work, you've got to bring all of that together. So for me, it's about quality, it's about technology, and it's about being able to deliver offset. So if you can't do those three things, it's really difficult to grow. You won't just do it on price. You have to do it on what you're doing to invest in the product and what you're doing to help your customer put that product in the places it needs to have some of that work done. And for me, you've got to have a model that does all of that.
Colin, I remember reading in Daily Telegraph once you were quoted as saying you would fly on an aircraft with a Rolls-Royce engine because it was safe and you knew it was safe. How long is it going to be until you're going to be happy flying on an engine with a Chinese-built engine on the aircraft?
I'm happy flying on almost anything, just out of interest, on the
That's
grounds
that...
No, on the grounds that once I've got to the airport, all the risk is gone. Yeah. Well, once I've got through immigration, all the risk is gone. You just die of boredom. Well, we've got to face it. China's putting 25 billion into the civil aerospace business to grow, basically to take the dinner off the Western manufacturers' plates. And the word is really about, Paul mentioned it, competition. The UK industry is second in civil aerospace. It's an absolutely phenomenal industry. We've come there from historical reasons and from the original military investments that were made post the Second World War. And we've got to recognise that these other countries would like some of this very high value manufacturing capability and design capability. And if you're putting 25 billion in and you've got a country with the industrial might and finance of China, they are hugely competitive and will continue to be so. And Scott mentioned Malaysia, Singapore, Malaysia. When you go there, you just realise what competition is. So certainly when I was employed by Rolls-Royce, every day you sort of woke up realising that not only you having to try and beat the great American companies that were fighting you all the time, but you've now got to stay match fit in every single thing you do to be to earn the right to be a supplier to Airbus, Boeing, or given the Chinese in the future. So. In the UK, people talk about productivity being down. I'm not quite as negative as some of our politicians. Productivity in aerospace generally is 20% better than a lot of manufacturing, but the quality has to be 100%. And what you need is quality and delivery on time, but quality is absolutely key. But we need to recognise that it's going to be we're going to have to invest in technology, have to invest in improving our productivity, and if the guy in Malaysia can deliver it cheaper than you, then they ain't going to come to you if they've got the quality. So, aerospace, there is no free lunch anymore, even if there was when the big defence programmes were on. We just got to recognise how hard these other countries would like the sort of technology and long-term growth that aerospace offers. And China and Singapore, Malaysia, Vietnam, they're all going to be trying to take what the West thinks is their right to deliver. So, as what chief executives of companies always stand up at the beginning of or the end of last year and always say, it's going to be a really tough year. I've never heard one say next year is going to be easy. And that's true in the aerospace business. Next year will not be easy. It's going to be intense pressure all the time. And you've got to shape up or get out, bluntly. We have got fantastic support in the UK now with the what was the Aerospace Technology Initiative to put a significant degree of funding, which a lot of companies are then contributing 50-50 to. I wish it was more, and Paul and myself are always arguing with the government ministers that if we're going to match the ambitions of China, what Germany already gets, what NASA delivers, and other people deliver in America, then that really is, that several £1 billion really is the minimum. But we just have to work it every day, and there's no, we have to be, to use the Toyota metric, every day you've got to try and lean your operation a little bit more.
So your message then to the UK industry particularly is quality works, but time is right, but you've still got to get your price right. So it's get leaner, get fitter.
Absolutely. But without quality, you're dead in the water. Yeah. Nobody will accept a widget that goes on a £150 million aeroplane if it's going to stop it. I mean, ringing up the boss of Qatar saying, sorry, your aeroplane didn't go, my bolt broke, really isn't a fun conversation. So quality's got to be great. And then price is just about competition. So you've got to be priced.
Okay. I mean, it's worth saying that, the good thing about the UK at the moment is that there are, industry kind of schemes, industry and government schemes that are designed to help companies get to that place, or at least on the journey, whether that's helping them with establishing their own innovation and technology development activity, being part of the big collaborative programs that the likes of, Rolls, Airbus are running on some of the, if you like, the wing and engines of the future, or whether it's, helping with that kind of productivity and competitiveness challenge. So there are, if you like, tools and assistance out there. It's not like anyone has to do this on their own. I think that's a strong proposition. Could always be stronger, but it is a strong proposition from the UK that there are ways in which the supply chain can access help and support.
Can I say one other additional point, please? The other thing is, we do have some of the fantastic universities in the UK, and with the UK industrial strategy talking about trying to localise more, people getting together in clusters, I would say go to your regional development authority, or your LEPs as they're called this week, and try and work with the local education people as well and other small companies to improve your competitiveness, whether it's through some of the bigger national programmes like Sharing Growth or SC21, but lots of people can help you improve your quality and your productivity, and try and engage the academics as well.
Okay, I want to move on to another area that the government has been pushed on, which is the environment. A number of different points, whether that's actually going to be on fuel economies, do we look at electrification of aircraft, and noise. And Colin, if I could start with you with the noise issue, because you've been familiar with making those very noisy engines for so many years.
Those very quiet engines.
Those very quiet, noisy engines. What should be happening with that? And we're talking about the third runway at Heathrow, and there's all the fuss about the noise there. And what's your feeling on that one?
Well, I told Alan on the phone last week that I think Paul was there a couple of years ago. I was in the House of Parliament. We were talking about Heathrow 3, and I pointed out the best place to put the runway was actually on the embankment, on the grounds that with the traffic noise and trains going past, you wouldn't hear the aeroplanes. And that's genuinely true. Noise is a very complex subject. If you've got background noise, then you don't hear quieter noises that are quieter. So one of the problems of putting aircraft in the countryside is you hear them over the sparrows. Stick them in the town and you won't hear them. And I bet no one's heard an aeroplane go into either Docklands or Heathrow while we've been sitting here, albeit we're next to a railway line. So noise is a complex topic, and there comes a point where you don't need to do much more. And from a personal point of view, I suspect the latest aeroplanes out of Airbus and Boeing are at a point where it would sort of be daft to try and go any further on noise. And the reason I say that is because there is always a compromise in aerospace. If you make the aircraft quieter, you will probably make it slower or less fuel efficient, because you've got to get the balances right. As Heathrow 3 comes in, Terminal 3, Runway 3 comes in, what we'll do is we'll get the more modern aircraft much bigger dilution, and the older aircraft will start going, and people just genuinely won't notice the more modern aircraft. And if you ever I'm a rugby enthusiast, and when you sit at Twickenham and you see the A380 come in, you can't hear it. You can hear the old planes, but not the modern ones. On the environment stuff, I mean, we just have to work it. One of the climate change, in my view, is happening. You're getting increased volatility. It's only Donald Trump doesn't believe it. And the volatility is an issue for aerospace, and we're all going to have to get used to that. And by volatility, extreme weather events are going to become more common. That was modelled 10, 15 years ago, and I think you're beginning to see it. Also, of course, you're now hearing about it a lot more because everyone's got a smartphone. But still, the reality is that civil aerospace is 2.5% CO2 production, which is slightly less than the internet. And that bloody stupid Bitcoin stuff is making the internet even worse. But as you do decarbonise other sectors, aerospace will start to stick out more. More electric, absolutely fundamental to improving the efficiency of aircraft, but the real issue there is you're not going to get a transatlantic electric aeroplane powered by batteries. Batteries are about 100 times less efficient than kerosene. Kerosene's 46 megajoules per kilogram, and a battery's about 100th of that at the moment. Doesn't matter in a Tesla, you don't go very far. But we will electrify aircraft more. We'll get rid of the pneumatics, we'll get rid of the hydraulics, we'll put more high power electrics on it. But you're not going to get an all-electric solution for long-range transport. Short-range, hopping around town, maybe, and you can get a really good solution there. And industry's going to have to invest in it because there are the good advantages for it. But there's no single issue, there's no easy switch to say that 2.5% CO2 we can get rid of. It's just not going to be like that. What we've got to do is try and stabilise that. And if you work maths out, 4 to 5% compound growth per annum. Civil aerospace, typically technology delivers about 1% per annum on fuel burn savings. So we're going to grow at 3%, 4% compound. And I don't see a solution to that unless you create artificial kerosene, which you can do.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to finish off now by just asking a question that always intrigues me, and I'm going to start with you, Scott, really. It's you sit in the position you do. What's the thing that keeps you awake at night, that wakes you up? What worries you the most?
Probably a couple of things. I think, I said earlier on, the demand for quality of aircraft is the pressure is definitely, you talked about the Qatar experience. Certainly, the supply chain, both and being part of the supply chain, supporting our customers and people who support me, both in terms of quality, escapes, things that become known after you've maybe delivered an aircraft or you get into those types of issues. For me, keeping the control and governance of us making products at rate, as the rate increases, the cycle times are reducing, the pressure is reducing to actually get those aircraft out. What worries me more than anything else is actually keeping control of the quality of the product and making sure that we can actually keep a reputation where it's always been. And there are plenty of people willing to take this work away. If you make a really big screw up, and there have been some high profile issues with Toyota and Volkswagen and other industries. For me, something like that in our industry is what keeps me awake at night, and governance becomes really important in terms of our quality systems. And I lose very little. I lose sleep over financials, I lose sleep over losing people, I lose sleep over a lot of things, but that's probably the one thing that at the moment you sometimes feel you've got the least level of control over, because you've got so many partners in this industry that you have to rely on, who have to be reputable and have to be there to support you and work with you. Your reputation is based on the partners you've selected, and that for me is the one thing that takes a lot of energy to control.
Paul?
So I could say mostly Arsenal's form, but I've given that up now. I've given that up. There is no future in that. I think that the concern for me is always the same, which is that the UK has always had a strong global position in the aerospace sector, and what concerns me most is ensuring that whoever is currently in government does not forget that that kind of global position did not happen by chance. It was the consequence of a long-held and pretty actively pursued national policy. And for me, ensuring that we continue to have that kind of support from whoever is in government is my number one concern.
Okay, thank you. And Colin, apart from the English rugby team?
Don't need to worry about them. Really, it's the same as Paul. I fret that most aerospace and defence projects are multi-year, multi-governments. If you think that most pilots of the Joint Strike Fighter haven't yet been born, you begin to realise the timescales that we're talking about, and really quick, short-term change this, change that, change the other, either in the educational system or in the support for industry, is genuinely frightening. I think one of the things journalists need to do is to just try and explain how complex some of these systems that fly millions of people every hour around the world are, and what remarkable feat we've done to make them as safe as they are. I mean, there are no crashes anymore, thank goodness, in civil aerospace.
Great. Thank you. And if I thank you, Paul, Scott, Colin, and thank you very much for watching this. And just remember that you can catch up on more of the industry news by subscribing to wearefin.com. So that's it from us. Thank you very much, and goodbye.